Dive watches seem to be everywhere right now. With durable, waterproof construction and a stylish, sporty look, they're a versatile choice for everyday wear. Over the years, I've reviewed numerous models from well-known brands like Casio, Seiko, Invicta and Orient. But somehow there's a big one I seem to have missed. Citizen. Indeed, I have reviewed Citizen before, but only the dressier super titanium models, and not any of the dive watches, which they're perhaps even better known for. Their famous Promaster line has been lauded since its introduction in 1989, and I've got my hands on perhaps their most time-tested model, the NY0040. This fan-favourite diver has been on sale since the mid-1990s, and while it lacks the historical achievements, extreme water resistance or high-tech features of some other Promaster models, it's retained a high level of popularity, with 2 colour variants still sitting in the top 5 Citizens on Amazon UK when sorted by review count. My question is, how has it retained its relevance over such a long period of time? I mean, there must be something that makes this one special. I'm also wondering, is it even worth buying today, when newer divers are available from not only Citizen but rival brands too? Well, let's take a look at it and see how it stacks up. So first impressions were mixed. Now the box and packaging is just your standard Citizen affair. The long warranty period is also nice, though that may vary if you buy this through a grey market site like I did. Funnily enough though, this first issue wasn't anything to do with that or the presentation of the watch in any way. No, it was the smell. Weirdly, when I removed the plastic film covering the rear of the watch, I got a whiff of what we call here in the north of England, Bobby Orange or BO. I can only describe the scent as a combination between dirt, sweat and poo. This film was so neatly adhered that I've got to assume it just shipped from the factory like this. And even though it was mostly removed with some alcohol wipes, the initial pungency was an unwelcome surprise. Now the smell has finally faded, but there was a mild aroma left for a good couple of weeks. I purchased this unit from Amazon, so perhaps it's been stored incorrectly at some point, or maybe the adhesive has gone off, because I've never had this with any other Citizen, so I'm assuming it's just a bizarre one-off. I think I need some colour behind me as well. I'm blending in. Something that's also a one-off is the design of the NY0040. As you can see, the layout is unlike most other affordable dive watches, as you have the crown sitting on the left side of the Promaster rather than the right. I can't find a statement directly from Citizen about this repositioning, and they just don't reply to my emails when I email them, though I'd imagine it's more for comfort rather than inherent function. In this configuration, the crown can't hit your hand or dig into your arm, even if you like wearing your watches lower down on your wrist, which is always a nice bonus. Alternatively, I guess if you're left-handed or someone who prefers to wear watches on your right wrist, unlike other watches, the crown here will be more accessible for you. As a right-handed person coming from a traditional watch layout, it isn't immediately intuitive, but you do get used to it after several wears. Winding and time setting just takes a bit longer each time. Visually, I prefer the standard 3 o'clock position instead, though I can live with this and the size bothers me more than where it's situated. That's because it's a pretty large crown for a watch with such a small dial. Thanks to the chunkiness, it is easy to operate and has bundles of grip, though it does jut out substantially from the shallow guards. While we're on the topic of size, you may be surprised to learn that this model has a near 42mm diameter across the centre. That's because on the surface, it looks far smaller. In fact, it's not too far off fitting my tiny 6-inch wrist. Primarily that's because width measurements don't always tell the full story. Arguably, lug-to-lug size is a more accurate predictor of how a watch will fit, and the NY0040 sits at just 47.3mm in this regard, meaning it's towards the smaller end of the scale. Additionally, the bezel is narrower than the case at 41mm, and the overall package is just 12.6mm thick, which is relatively small for a diver using this movement. We'll get to that part later. Moreover, the dial is fairly narrow, at only 29mm across, enhancing the illusion. It's probably still best suited to medium-sized wrists, which is also evident from the fact there's a touch of excess strap on my small arm, though the compact nature, combined with the straight lugs, make this a more versatile option than most Citizen watches. If solar-powered quartz suits your needs and you fancy downsizing further, the newer 37mm Promaster may also be worth considering. Overall, the main bulk of the watch feels substantial and high quality, with a solid case that houses a brushed finish up top and high polished flanks. I'd say it's about equal with Seiko and Orient in that regard, but not as nicely done as Chinese brands like San Martin, which offer finer brushing and more refined edges. Still, I really like the prominent tooth-like shoulders of the watch, which provide a curved alternative to the straight lugs used on most divers. Their wideness also feels like a minor nod to vintage skin divers. Something a bit more divisive is the bezel. Now it does have some notable notable positives. The coin edge sections provide great control, and the alignment is spot on too, which is something you can't say about most Seiko divers. And backplay? Well, there is none. Yeah, unlike every other diver I've tried in this price bracket, this Promaster feels incredibly secure with great tolerances. It really does stay at whatever point you set it to. Unfortunately, this is only a 60 click bezel with an aluminium insert, so it feels quite light and cheap with a tinny noise. It also looks quite unusual, with several intermingled smooth areas that I think you'll either love or hate. That said, the super tight action still makes this one fun to use, just in a different way than usual. Straddling the bezel is that flat crystal. This is just plain entry-level mineral glass, meaning it won't perform as well versus scratches as crystals offered by other brands. Seiko still offers their Hardlex crystal, which performs marginally better, while Orient has started implementing the far superior sapphire in their refreshed dive watch lineup. Some newer versions of these Promasters do come with sapphire, but usually at a significantly higher price than this model or the Orient watches. One minor advantage is that this crystal is much clearer than the sapphire on the Orient Mako 3, which does reduce the vibrance of that dial. Older models like this one also seem to have terrible stock images that look like they were taken on your grandma's iPad. Thankfully, in person, it does look much better. From a design perspective, it feels very much like a product of its time, with a 90s color palette consisting of a navy backdrop and coral red accents. The loomed markers too are displayed in a light pear green tone, rarely used these days. I guess the results depend on how much you resonate with the style of this era. Frustratingly, the loom on the hands is also more of a white color, a bizarre choice that doesn't coincide with the similarly proportioned markers beneath. Maybe it's for legibility reasons, but it doesn't look super cohesive. Despite what most images indicate, it surprisingly boasts a stealthy sunburst finish, which adds character, especially from tight angles where contrast is at its highest. Though I'd say the indexes look inferior to those fitted to some modern watches. These appear to be punched through from the rear rather than applied to the dial surface. And while this likely prevents misalignment, it doesn't enhance the depth of the dial to the same degree. I wouldn't call the NY0040 a looker in the traditional sense, though it does avoid looking generic, a common pitfall encountered by newer brands. It also has a dark day-date wheel that, while not color matched to the dial, at least does a better job of blending in than a stock white window would. As you can see from the lower text, this Promaster offers the industry standard 200 meter water resistance rating, so it'll easily cope with aquatic activities. I've read online that this is supposedly ISO rated too, though I can't find any documentation from Citizen that actually confirms this, but it reportedly has a reasonable service history in the military. Of course, the NY0040 of today isn't identical to that which launched in the 1990s. It's had some updates along the way to somewhat keep up with the times. One such upgrade is the movement. No prizes for guessing that this is a Miyota automatic, given that Miyota is owned by Citizen. Predictably, it's one of their lower cost 8000 series movements, specifically the caliber 8204 according to the rear, which provides hacking and hand-winding capabilities at a stated accuracy of -20 to +40 seconds a day. I tried to open the back to show you, I could not budget, so I'll have to trust Citizen that that's the case. Unfortunately, like most 8000 series Miyotas, you can both feel and hear the rotor spinning when it's on the wrist. You know, more than most automatics at least, which can be quite annoying in quiet environments. Unlike some Seiko divers, you also can't see the unit through the rear of the watch, but it's not exactly eye candy anyway. One advantage this watch has over some similarly priced alternatives is the strap. I'd take this half-decent rubber strap over most rubbish bracelets any day. It's got a nicely textured rear, along with ventilation holes to prevent sweat buildup, as well as 2 keepers and a custom-shaped buckle. It's comfortable and a step up from that fitted to the Casio Duro, with a colour that perfectly ties the whole package together. An underrated boon is the sheer number of adjustment holes here. On most larger watches like this, I'm forced to resign myself to the final hole, and even that usually results in the watch hanging loose. However, this Citizen has almost 3 inches worth of holes, meaning it can accommodate a huge range of wrist sizes. I'm not sure my wrist has ever seen the 3rd hole on a watch strap before. As I alluded to earlier, there is some excess poking atop, though this is still a major win from a usability perspective. If this fits me, it'll almost certainly fit you. Other variants of this watch ship on a bracelet instead, though I can't attest to its quality as I haven't tried it. Low light performance is middle of the road. When next to the Orient Mako 3 and the Seiko 5 SRPD, you'll see it's better than the Orient, but clearly falls short of the Seiko. The large markers, they do aid visibility no doubt, and there's actually an alternative version of this Citizen which has a fully loomed dial if you're targeting torch-like performance. Here are my surface level thoughts then about this versus the Seiko and Orient. I think this Promaster, outside of the crystal, is as well built as the others, and is 90% as good in terms of case finishing. In fact, it's probably the better diver from an aquatic and functional perspective. Still, it has the most dated and least impressive appearance, especially compared to the Mako Sport, another Orient watch which looks phenomenal for a budget option. This Citizen strap is superior to the non-bracelet Seiko models, though this watch is also powered by my least favorite movement. For comparison, the Seiko automatic is reasonably finished and much quieter, while the Orient one is the most accurate of the units I've tried. The main advantage this Citizen has, even over the other Citizens, is price. On grey market sites like JomoShop and Amazon, it's currently selling for around $180 or £180 on average, which is a chunk less than the newer gen Seikos and half the price of the Mako 3, which seems to have soared in price over the last few months. The Mako 3 is absolutely not worth $400 by the way, so I'd recommend waiting for prices to come down. My connections have told me that should be resolved soon. In reality, when you take a step back, the current competition for this watch is predominantly the likes of the previous gen Orient Ray and Mako 2, which usually end up selling for a similar figure. It's an extremely close call between those models, but I think the Ray in particular is probably the better looking choice, though it does have a worse stock strap. Nevertheless, this Citizen still does a good job of filling the void between the lower cost quartz divers and these newer marked up models. And you could also throw the Invicta Pro Diver in the mix too, though the Citizen has a more original design and no huge side engraving. It's one of those watches that has no awesome standout features, but at the same time, if you know what you're buying, you probably won't have any regrets. It's a really solid, reliable choice. Though I'm keen to look at the NY0120 series Promasters, which look much sexier and more colourful. While you're waiting, you should definitely check out our review of the Orient Mako 3, which is on screen now. We compared it versus the Mako 2, or Ray 2 in that case, to see if it's actually worth the price bump.